There. All right. A little hot there. Okay. All right. Continuing in our sermon series, The Jesus People. We just followed a series about Jesus, and then we're talking about the Apostle Paul. Last week we laid the foundation in which how he deals with other people in general, and then we're going to deal with some specific passages. And today I'm kind of going to go off script because it's Mother's Day. Throughout my ministry and throughout most people's ministry, there's kind of 5 passages we preach on Mother's Day. We talk about Moses' mom, Jochebed. We talk about Samuel's mom, Hannah. We talk about Jesus' mom, Mary. We talk about Timothy's mother and grandmother, Lois and Eunice. And we talk about Proverbs 31. My professor at preaching in college said, listen, on Mother's Day, you can preach whatever you want, as long as it's one of those 5 passages. All right, and that's kind of been the rule of thumb. We follow those along. Well, I'm going to talk about a passage from the book of Romans that I've never spoke about before, and I hope is encouraging to you. Now, let me lay the foundation of Romans, okay? Paul writes this theological document, this idea that faith comes and justification comes through faith in Jesus Christ, and it's going to unify everyone who's ever believed under Jesus. And that's kind of the theme of Romans. We're going to walk through the fulfillment of the law. We're going to walk through justification by faith. And as he reaches the end of the book in chapter 15, he starts to get more personal. He starts to talk about, here's how that's going to play out. And then when he reaches chapter 16, he's going to give a list of greetings, all right? And I don't know how he got the names of everybody there. I kind of like to think in my own mind that he just sent down to the church and said, send me your membership list. And he got the membership list and he started going through the names. Look at all the people that I know. I better greet most of them. And each one has significance and meaning in chapter 16. Priscilla and Aquila, who I've taught with. Epaenetus, my first convert in Asia. A big deal there. Andronicus and Junia, people that were in prison with me. And he walks through each one of these and their significance and their connection. And then in verse 13, he says something that I really want to focus on today. So here's Romans 16, verse 13. Greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother, who has been a mother to me too. Greet Rufus. I'm going to do is just look at the 2 people in this passage, okay? The first one is Rufus. Now, you need to know Rufus is an extremely common name during this time. There have been 374 different inscriptions. When they've done archaeological digs, they found 374 different little inscriptions with the name Rufus on it. And here's probably why, okay? The name means red, red. So you can imagine your child is born and it has red hair, and you go, Rufus. I mean, it's pretty much a given. It's kind of like today. A child is born and it looks like it's extremely intelligent, and they go, Matthew. There's 8 or so of us in this congregation, so back off. Anyway, it's a common name, so it's kind of hard to pin down exactly who this is, but we think we know. There is some historical context and biblical background that builds to this passage, and it's something that's kind of easy to pass by. Back at the crucifixion, okay? We're going to go back to the crucifixion. Jesus has been flogged, beaten, crown of thorn upon his head. They give him a cross, and they ask him to carry his cross through the streets. He begins to carry the cross, but he keeps falling under the weight of the cross. So the Roman soldiers stop and they grab someone. We're going to go back to Mark chapter 15. And in Mark 15, verse 21, it says this: a certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way in from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. Now, a couple of things to note. Most of the time when someone's mentioned like this in the Gospels by name, it's because they went on to be something after that, and they would recognize this name. And so he says, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, and tradition says Alexander and Rufus were church leaders. Now, again, we got to go a little backstory. This is written about in the Gospel of Mark. Mark is writing down the stories of the Apostle Peter, okay? He's doing this in Rome. That's where he writes it down, and he's writing down the stories, and he's going to distribute his copies of the story of Jesus to those who are very close by. People in Rome are going to know these names. Remember, we're in the book of Romans. They're going to know these names as people who were leaders in their church. Rufus, as we can best put together, becomes a church leader. Put it all together. So Simon carries the cross of Jesus. He goes to Golgotha. He sees Jesus nailed on a cross. He watches him die by crucifixion. But he's there for the Passover. That's why he would have traveled there. And there, he stays around for the Passover, and 3 days later, Jesus is resurrected. He gets maybe to see Jesus. He at least knows the stories of Jesus' resurrection, and it causes him to be a believer. He then is going to travel back home, and he's going to teach his wife and his 2 children, and they're going to grow up in the faith. They're going to end up in Rome, and they're going to be church leaders there. And that becomes a significant stepping point in history. We'll get there in a minute. He calls Rufus, though, the chosen one. And the word in English is better elect. The word elect is used throughout the book of Romans, and it refers often to people who are believers. But usually in the book of Romans, more specific, a believer who is given a specific task and purpose. And in Romans chapters 16, everybody that he lists has some sort of specific task and purpose. And so there's some reason he mentions Rufus. Tradition is that Rufus, his brother Alexander, his mom and dad start the church in Rome. Which here's the significance. Over the next 100 years or so, Jerusalem is no longer going to become the center of religion. It's going to move over to Rome. Okay? You've heard of the Roman Catholic Church? Okay, that's the idea. Is it shifted over to there? And the people who started it, well, a Simon who carried the cross and a guy named Rufus. And Paul says, I want you to greet Rufus because he was special to this church and really, in essence, to all churches. A picture like this. When I was at Ozark Christian College and you went into the library, on the right-hand side there was an entire wall that was an office. I don't know what it looks like now. I haven't been in there in several years, but there was an entire wall that was an office. There was windows inside there. And when you would come in late at night, there was always some guy in that office. They told me his name. It didn't mean anything to me, really. I'd never had him as a professor. I'd never taken any classes with him. I didn't have any personal experience. His name was Seth Wilson. But what I knew is when I went out into churches and you said something about Seth Wilson, everybody sort of responded a little differently because Seth Wilson started Ozark Christian College. And when he was in his 80s, they said, we'll just let you have a little office here. You can just fill and do whatever you want to do. But everybody still respected him as a guy who had influence not just over that college, but over this entire region. And when Paul says, greet Rufus, he's recognizing somebody like that. Recognize that this guy has influence. And let's just pause there and do a little application. It's amazing to me how the story of God all intertwines. How a guy who's visiting Jerusalem, who carries a cross, who starts a church, who has impact for thousands of years. Never underestimate any small thing that you do. God could be doing something big and you just don't know it yet. It says, greet Rufus. But then the second part of this passage is his mother. Okay, it's Mother's Day, so this is why we go to this passage. We're going to go back, Romans 16:13. Greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother, who's been a mother to me. Now, again, let's put this all into its setting. We have a woman who is Simon's wife, we're guessing, that carried the cross. She's Rufus and Alexander's mother, and never once is she named. But that doesn't mean she's not unnoticed. Paul notices her. Greet his mother. It's his biological mother. And we don't know a whole lot of details. We don't know her name. We don't know her information. What we know is that some reason she is a support to Rufus. Now, what does that mean? Maybe she served beside Rufus, okay? There are people that can do that. The Christian Standard had an article a few years ago about this question of should you hire family as staff? And in that article, they detailed a church where it was a husband, and then he hired his wife, and then they hired their son, and then they hired another son. Their staff was like 8 people, large, thriving church, and 5 of them were related. And maybe that was it. Maybe there was this connection in which they served side by side. Or maybe she was just a support. Maybe she was someone who was always encouraging him. And Paul knew sometimes it's hard to be a church leader. And if Rufus was a church leader, his mother had been there encouraging him and keeping him in the ministry. My mom's here. Several years ago, we started the new church in Iowa, and we needed a truck. We were given this old truck, and it was on its last leg. And I talked to my parents, and Dad wanted a new truck. And so we had this solution. Dad was going to buy a new truck. He was going to donate his old truck to the church. All right? So they drive up, and they donate the truck to the church. It had several miles on it, but I took a picture of it, and they said, we want to, we don't want to make a big deal out of it. We don't want anybody to know. This is an anonymous donation. So I said, okay. So I put a picture up on social media, church's new truck. And then I put the caption underneath. I said, my parents, who wish to remain anonymous, donated a truck to the church. But I've always felt a level of support in all that I do. Maybe that's it. Maybe he looks at him and says, he was such a support to him. And let's pause there. And let's be honest. This church would not exist without ladies, without women who give up their time on behalf of their own children. They teach in the back. They're going to lead vacation Bible school on behalf of other people's children. You can be in here because there's people back there. There are women who are supporting the guys who lead the church. There are women who are leading their areas of ministry. They are the network. And isn't it ironic that she's not named? She's this unnamed person who seems to be maybe behind the scenes and making it all work. And I would say that's very true of how it works with most ladies. They're not out front. They're always behind the scenes, always doing things that make it all work. But then Paul adds this line. She's been a mother to me too. Now, the way old translations handled it, it made it seem like that maybe that she'd adopted him. That's not a great way to handle it. The passage basically means that she was like a surrogate mother, that she had assumed this role. Now, we don't know a lot about the Apostle Paul's background. Okay, he was originally called Saul. We know that. He will reveal that he's from the province of Asia. He says that he comes from a legacy of Pharisees. Probably his father or his grandfather was a Pharisee. He's born to the tribe of Benjamin. In Acts 23, it says he has a sister and she has a son. We don't know a whole lot more about the Apostle Paul than that. Now, there's tradition. Tradition says his parents were descended from King Herod. His father was Antipater II. His mother was named Cyprus. They were big deal, but that's all speculation and tradition. We don't know. We don't know if his mother is dead, if she's alive, if she said, I don't want anything to do with this Christian faith, or we don't know. But somewhere in this sweet woman became like a mother to Paul. What does that mean? How do you mother someone in the faith? Titus chapter 2 comes pretty close. It talks about there that the older ladies should encourage the younger ladies. You should teach them basically how to be wives and how to be parents and how to take care of their home. But that's kind of a very specific older women to younger, newly married women. I think it's bigger than that. I asked a lot of people this week, I said, what does it mean to mother someone? And they said something like nurture, love, concern, caring. taking the time, this is my favorite, taking the time to do whatever is needed for the other person. That's a mother. Of taking the time to do what somebody else needs. I kind of picture it like this. I mean, maybe this is just my experience. Paul comes in after a long day of preaching. He's been out working hard all day for the gospel. He sits into the chair there at Rufus's home. Rufus's mother says, "Can I get you a cup of coffee?" "Yeah, I'd love a cup of coffee." "And would you like a cookie?" "I'd like a cookie, of course. Who wouldn't like a cookie?" "Well, what kind of cookie do you like?" "Well, I'll take whatever you have." "Well, I don't have any. I'm going to make them. What would you like? Would you like peanut butter? Would you like chocolate chip? Oatmeal raisin? I mean, are you those kind of person?" "Why don't you do this, Paul? Tell me what you want. You go get cleaned up. I will go make some cookies. We'll come back and we'll sit by the fire and we'll just enjoy the rest of the evening." Does that sound like anyone you know? "I'll do whatever it takes to make you feel comfortable." The Apostle Paul says, "She was like a mother to me. She cared for me." So I want to apply that. If you're an older lady in this room, find someone to help be a mother in the faith. Find someone that you can pour your life into. Invest. If you're an older lady in here, but I'm going to say this could apply to an older man, invest your time in the next generation. Take the time to connect to young people. Out of your age bracket, out of your demographic, take the time. It's time to do whatever they need. It can take a lot of forms. I went on Google this week and trying to find an illustration. How do you illustrate someone who is like a mother to me? Well, I found out that Hallmark has an entire line of cards dedicated to like a mother to me. You know what most of them were written to? Mother-in-laws. Mother-in-laws who looked upon the one that their child married and saw that their spouse doesn't have a good, solid family system. I mean, there's about a 50-50 chance that that's going to be true. And I can be like a mother to them. So, some of you know what that means. There's all kinds of ways that this spells out. But if you are serious about faith and pouring it out, choose someone of the next generation and invest your time into them. From the flip side, if you're a younger person in here and for whatever reason you don't have a strong family network, it'd be a lot of reasons: death, divorce, just disinterest. Find someone to look up to. There are some older people in this congregation who would love to spend time with you, to share their wisdom, their experience, and their life. And so often they just don't get asked. I found a preacher this week that shared this story. He said, I think the reason that Paul is close to Rufus's mother is because she was probably present one of the times the Apostle Paul got persecuted. When he'd been beaten with rods. You don't heal from that in just a day. You need somebody to take care of you. Maybe, just maybe, Rufus's mother had nursed Paul back to health after one of the times that he'd been persecuted and beaten. And he said, the reason I say that, I don't know anything about this guy. He said, but the reason I say that is because of his sickness. And he never revealed what his sickness was in the sermon. I'm sure the congregation knew it. I kind of felt like it was cancer. But this was an unmarried guy, and he said, I had to ask some of the older ladies in our congregation to come take care of me. And he said, and he starts through the list that would show up each day of the week, and they would bring him soup. And he'd start through the list of those who would sit and visit with him, and those who would go by because he said, I needed somebody to take care of me. And I'm going to say that we all need that in some form or another. And what better place to look than to the next generation within the church? Paul, wonderful Paul, writes this letter to Romans, and he puts this one line that still grips me. Greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother, who has been like a mother to me. And if you look at scholars, and I read a lot of sermons, I read a lot of articles, most of the material is about Rufus. Who was Rufus, and how did he start the church, and what influence did he have? I mean, there's a lot of detail there because of the connection to Mark about what went on in his life, a lot of tradition. And usually in most of the scholarship and most of the sermons I read, his mom just kind of gets a passing mention. Yeah, well, she was there. Apparently she's not important. We didn't give her a name. I think the Apostle Paul was the exact opposite. I think he was right, and he's like, greet Rufus. Y'all know Rufus. But I want to make sure you know about his mom. She cared about people, including me. The Chicago Tribune in 2013 ran an article about Becky O'Connell. The title of the article was The Baby Whisperer. It told her life. Never told what happened to her husband. She was single at this point, and in 1999, she had 2 sons, and in 1999, one of her sons died. She spent the next 3 years in pretty much a depression. And in 2002, she was sitting in an office, and she saw an advertisement for needed people for foster care. She said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to stop spending my time thinking about myself. I want to try to invest in others. They brought her some different kids, and she found that she could calm babies. She had just a mannerism or a voice that she just really could calm babies. And many of these babies have been through turmoil. I mean, they've been ripped from their mother. They've been ripped from what they've known. They've been passed around. Some of them have been neglected. And in whatever case they had, no matter how much this baby they cried, they brought it to her, and she had some tricks and tactics, and she could just always calm that baby. And so they started to bring her more babies. And some of them for a day, some of them for 2 or 3 days, some of them for a couple months until they could figure out what was next. If you go to her house, when the article was written, one entire spare bedroom, she has stacks of diapers by size. She has clothes stacked up by size because she said, I could receive a call at 4 a.m, and somebody has to be there for those babies. They bring them in. She cleans them up, changes them, cares for them. And with each one, she said, I take a 3 for 5 card. I write down their name, their birthday, their information. And when they come and they take that baby, I know they will never remember me, but I will remember every one of them. In life, we can pour out love to others. And sometimes that happens by birth, but often it happens by choice. Let's pray. Father God, I pray